There's so few of us. So if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to bring up as well, feel free to jump right in. You don't even have to raise your hand. I don't mind getting interrupted. And we'll make it into a conversation. So for the two of you that may or may not know me, I'm Aydan Fullbuster. I'm WYSIWYG Visions on Facebook, and I've been cosplaying for about 14, 15 years now. So I've been doing it for a little while, and I have a lot of fun with it. I'm also the cosplay director here, so if you have questions about it or if you want to enter the cosplay contest, I can help you out with that. So today we're going to be doing two things. First, we're going to go through our tips and tricks of cosplay, some more of the logistics, and then you're going to have a chance to kind of practice some things in a really fun game called the Cosplay Posing Battle. And I'll explain the rules once we get to that point. But it's super fun. I really like it.
Rule number 1, no JoJo's.
That is not a rule. So the first thing when you come up with a pose and when you're working on composition is that you want your pose to tell a story. So when you come up with something, you want to tell the story. You want to impart on your audience, which would be the camera and whoever sees your picture, kind of what it is you're looking at. So if you're just kind of straight out boring, that's not really engaging. It's not going to draw people's attention in. Instead, think about the motivation behind your character. So what would your character be thinking? What is your character saying? If it's just a single picture of just yourself, maybe you're telling a story. Maybe you are chatting with someone. Maybe you're contemplative. Maybe you're kind of thinking out. Maybe you're really innocent. So think about what it is that you want your audience to know about your character and the tone that you want your audience to see. Because that's what's going to draw them more than any type of construction, whether or not the scene is held together with duct tape and staples or made in a semi-professional manner. How you pose and drawing your audience in is what's going to make the photograph more than that. So to do that, there's a couple of different things that you want to look at. And one of the things that you want to do are angles. So these are examples of bad angles. So the first one, which this is the monstrosity, by the way, 3 rats, is I am very much straight on, which doesn't provide depth to the picture. It makes it very flat. And I'm also kind of bent very far forward in the middle, which unless you're doing a JoJo pose, or something very specific to the character, you kind of want to avoid, because it can make your midriff look really awkward. The second one is kind of a straight on like this. Now, one of the issues with this is that it doesn't really bring in your audience, and it doesn't really showcase your cosplay. So it's very flat. You can't really see a lot of the construction. You can't even really see a lot of what sorts of details or the front of the jacket. And it's easy to lose your audience. The other problem with that, especially when you're doing convention photos in a busy area, is that if there's a lot of things going on in the background, it's easy to lose the subject, which is you. You want to be the center of attention. You don't want everybody else behind you to be the center of attention. Unless it's a really fun photo bomb. That might be an exception. And then the picture of Guy on the far side, kind of the same thing. I'm really slouched outward, very flat, facing the camera. It's not really engaging, it's not very exciting. And it doesn't really tell a story of what the character is saying. Don't do that. So here's some things that you do want to look at. So ideally, you want to angle towards the camera. And with this, with this one, let's take a look at our feet here. We have 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and that brings depth. That creates dimension within a flat photo. So it helps draw your audience in. The other thing to keep in mind with angles is that as you pull the audience in, whatever your angles are is what the viewer's eye is going to be drawn to. So let's say with this one, I kind of want my eye to be drawn inward, kind of to the center of the photo. So I'm going to do a standard kind of 45 degree angle with my feet, match that with my shoulders, hunch over, and that draws the audience eye in about here. And it's the same thing, and so that is me posing as a cosplayer. However, you can work with your photographers to do the same thing with their angle. So that's what you see in this middle picture with Elle, where I myself am not really angling myself towards the camera. Instead, the camera is angling towards me, and that creates that same idea of depth. Now that it's just flat straight on, kind of at my midriff, it wouldn't be very exciting and it wouldn't really showcase me unless I was trying to do a silhouette. So the first rule of cosplay posing is that there's always exceptions to the rule. But what you want to do is make those exceptions work for you. And Will over there on the far right is the same idea. Well, I guess your left. So I'm trying to pull in, and I'm trying to focus more on my midriff. I have a book in my hand. I'm telling that story, and I'm able to angle on the straight edge of the stairway. So the idea with angles is you want to create depth, and you want to create, as compared to something really flat, bring it back in, and that creates depth, and it makes your picture look more real, and it makes you look more real and more exciting as a cosplayer. So when you're creating these angles, think about your characters and what it is you want to showcase, and use the angles to work towards you. Make the camera work for you. Any questions about these angles?
Yeah, I have a question, but more of an observation. Compared to the other ones, it says angles. It looks like you, the main points that are drawing you in are forms of different triangles.
I am so glad that you brought that up, because we're going to be talking about that in just a couple of slides. So like I mentioned, there's always exceptions to the angles. So here's one of a profile picture of myself as Elle. And I'm straight on at the camera, which is normally a no-go for most cosplays. However, if you're doing a portrait style, that can work. And it also depends on what you want your audience's eye to be drawn to. And in this case, it's the pocket watch. So that is front and center in the picture. We have that framed. If I did some angles with it, that pocket watch would be lost, and we would lose that part of the story. And here's another exception. This is, again, more of a silhouette style. And we're able to make it work because it's not a very busy background, so you don't lose the cosplayer in the background. So one of the main reasons you want angles is so you don't lose your cosplayer.
Something I've noticed with the one with the book is that you got a lot of dark colors with the silhouette, but you got that bright orange just popping out, which draws the eye right in there, which also helps.
It is. So if you're doing exceptions, think about what it is that you're wearing. What I'm wearing right now might kind of work with a busy background if I didn't do an angle, but I have so much dark on my cosplay that's easy for me to get lost in a background, as compared to Edna, which has a much brighter color. And so if I have a busier background, especially if it's kind of something on Will's over there on the right, you're not going to get lost quite as much, so it'll be easier to do a flat pose as compared to, I'm sorry, I don't know your character. Celestia. Celestia is wearing a lot of dark colors, and so you would want the angles to work for you so you don't lose yourself in the background. Does that make sense? Awesome. If something doesn't, just let me know. So you were asking about triangles. Triangles are a really good thing to think about when you are posing. It's called the rule of triangles. Now I'm going to try something new here, so bear with me.
You're trying a new angle?
Trying a new angle. We'll see if we get a right edge on it. Okay, so when you're posing, one of the things you want to look at are triangles. Triangles are what give you depth, and triangles are one of the things that pulls your audience in. So let's take a look at Maggie Lou here. This is Scattered Bones cosplay, who is running around today as Rose. So take a look at her.
Rose.
Armatis Rose. Very hard to miss. So we have a triangle here. We have a triangle here. We have a triangle here. And we have another triangle here and another triangle here. So what these triangles do is they pull your audience in, and when you're trying to figure out your angles, try to think of triangles. So let's say I do a pose similar to this guy right here. We have a triangle. When I'm thinking of my pose, I'm thinking, okay, I need a triangle with my feet down here at the bottom. All right, so that creates my depth, that nice 45-degree angle in. I have a triangle here, which also gives me something to do with my hands, because hands are just awkward. If I'm pulling out like this, I have a triangle right here. I have a triangle right here. And then I have another triangle up here on my hands and right here on my wrist. So what this tells me is that I have some depth, I'm doing something action-wise, and it gives me something to think about, because I don't know about you guys, but if somebody comes running up to me and says, hey, can I get your picture? Because you look awesome and I need your picture because you're my favorite character. Like, oh my goodness, that's awesome. Oh shoot, what do I do? Think triangles. If you think triangles, it's like, oh right, triangle, triangle, triangle. Perfect, triangle. After a while, it becomes a little bit more second nature, but it just takes practice, practice, practice. Does that make sense? Let's get something a little more complicated. So this is just a single cosplayer, but what if we're dealing with multiple cosplayers? Well, you can do a triangle with multiple cosplayers. And in that case, you can think about triangles for yourself, but triangles in conjunction with those friends of yours as well. So in this case, we have the standard triangles here. We have a triangle here with Noelle. We have a triangle here with Brains and with Genji. Very nice and symmetrical. People like symmetry. But look right here. We have some triangles here. We have a triangle here. So you can work with the triangle rule with other cosplayers to create that depth, both in yourself and for your group as a whole. This is a little bit harder to think about, and it's also harder if it's just somebody you meet on the whim. You're not exactly going to say, all right, so this person just asked us for cosplay picture about triangles. Doesn't always work that way. But you can position yourself to help with that depth and to draw that audience in. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, hands. I don't know about you guys, but hands are always annoying. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to draw a pretty looking stick figure with hands, or if I'm trying to pose for a cosplay with hands. They're just awkward, and I never seem to know what to do with them. One of the things when it comes to hands in cosplay is that you generally want your hands to be doing something. If they're just kind of limp and by your side, it doesn't draw your audience in. It doesn't tell that story. So for everybody that's just joining us, one of the biggest things when it comes to posing for cosplay, and posing in general, is that you want to tell a story. That is the theme of this panel, and that's the theme of a cosplay. When you put on a cosplay, you are putting on a character and you are telling a story. And so the point of posing in cosplay and taking a cosplay picture is that you want to tell a story. So you want to think about what it is that your character is thinking about. You want to think about the motivation of your character and try to portray that in your pose. So right over here we have King Gaius from Tales of Zillion. King Gaius is a pretty, he's a pretty solemn king. He doesn't really talk too much. He does have a nice sweet side to him, but he's a very, very serious character. So Moshi's cosplay over here tried to use their hands to tell that story. So as you can see here, we have a hand up here at the chin. It's very contemplative in its telling that story while maintaining that totally awesome triangle rule. And then we also are working with our prop here, which we'll get into in a moment. So when you're thinking of your hands, think about what the character is going to be doing. And it could be something as simple as bringing a hand up, or over here with Elle, bring a hand up here up to the temple, because that continues to give that dialogue that you can't give verbally in a picture. Something else I'm going to mention with this, a couple tips and tricks I found with hands, is that you don't really want to hide them. So if I'm doing a crossover pose here with my hands, you don't really want them on the inside, because then it looks like you don't have any hands. It's easy for that part of your body to get blacked out or whited out, depending on the shirt that you're wearing. So when you're crossing over, try to bring your hands along the outside. It makes it look a little bit more natural, and it helps draw that in, and it helps break out the monotony of whatever shirt it is that you're wearing. The other thing you want to be aware of is, unless it's character specific, you want to keep your fingers a little bit closer together. So unless it's a very specific pose and the camera is able to focus in and get all of your fingers, try to avoid broad fingers. Try to bring them in a little bit more. It'll make it look a little bit more like a hand and less disembodied, if that makes sense. Yes.
When you say bring your hand in, do you mean also with the thumb, or do we keep the thumb separate so we keep that triangle and also it looks like you actually have a full hand?
A lot of it depends on the pose that you're doing. If I'm doing an outstretch, I'll have my thumb a little bit more out. You don't want it so far out that you lose it from the rest of the fingers, but you don't need to have it completely in either. But about a 45-degree angle is usually pretty good. Good question. Another one that I see a lot with hands is pockets. You don't want your, there we go. You don't want your hands all the way in your pockets because then you lose them. But it's okay to have, so you want a little bit of your hand sticking out. It feels a little bit unnatural, especially if you have big pockets like I do. A little bit of your hand sticking out. You can hook a little bit like this, or kind of come up here like this, but you want to make sure you have a little bit of your hand sticking out of the pocket. Little small details.
What do you do if you have dark colored gloves?
You work the best you can. You may or may not want to put your hands in your pockets unless it's a character-specific pose. You would probably want to do something with at least one hand a little bit further out from your cosplay. That way you don't lose the hands, especially if you're wearing a dark jacket or something as well. A lot of that also depends on lighting. So work with your photographer. You can play with a few different poses with your hands, with it further in versus further out, and see what it looks like. Most photographers are very willing and actually super excited if you ask them to do that, because not everybody does, and that's part of their art too. Your photographer is your partner. That is not the person to be afraid of, that's the person you want to collaborate with. Two types of artists working together. There's nothing more beautiful. All right, any other questions on hands?
More like an observation when you're talking about pockets. I've done a couple shoots for people where this is like the nitpickiest of nitpicky, but where they did something akin to this, like some in, some out. And is there any like particular thing you could say about that?
Yeah, so some in, some out can look really awkward because it looks like half of your hand is there, half of it is not. So you generally, if you have some in, some out. All right, here we go. If you have some in, some out, you generally want like half of your hand and maybe your thumb. You generally don't want to go like this because you could probably see, especially from the back here, that looks really weird.
Just an accident.
Exactly. Let's not go that way. But generally, if you have half your hand in, a little bit sticking out, and your thumb out, that works out well. Another one I've done before is I've kind of hooked like this, or hooked up here, put right above. And that tends to look a little bit better in photography, even if we naturally kind of go like this. Cosplay isn't natural. This is not my natural hair.
What? How can you trick me like this?
I know. Spontaneous gasp of the
500 years dungeon.
Oh, okay, fine. Can I finish this first?
Fine. But only because I'm here.
Okay. Good observation and good question. Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, observations, or cookies? Do you even need cookies? One of these days, somebody will bring me a cookie to this.
I didn't know you wanted cookies, otherwise I would have brought you one.
You just need to read my mind.
We have some in the room, dummy.
Yes, but I don't have them here.
That's your own fault.
I know this.
Brief
I should have
intermission
done
while they run over to the VIP lunch. No.
There we go. Okay, so we have hands. Another big component of cosplay are props. And I know you are very familiar with props.
Yeah.
As are you. So props are a really big deal with cosplay. Now the thing with props and posing is that you want the prop to work with you. And remember, the prop helps tell a story. A prop is very important to a cosplay, it's important to a character, because it helps define who they are. A lot of times it is that one thing that really defines them and separates them from the rest of the cast. And so when you're working with a cosplay photographer, you want to work with that. So right over here I have my lovely Noelle, who has a little picture of Guy. And as you can tell, she was able to work with the prop to help tell the story. She's working with those triangles, and she was able to tie that into her expression. So she pulled the picture in, and she made it the centerpiece of the picture. Now, you don't necessarily have to bring a prop with you in order for it to be a prop. Oftentimes, your environment works as a prop as well. So in this case, I was doing a shoot, and there was this really awesome chainmail fence. And in this case, I was able to use the fence as a prop to help tell the story. We were able to work with some dimensions and angles and triangles to really tell a story here and use a makeshift prop. The other thing that you can use as props are other cosplayers. Your cosplay
Oh
can be a
my God.
prop. So when you're telling the story and when you're having some fun with your photography and with your posing, don't forget your props and don't forget to think about who your character is. What would they use for a prop? In terms of Keel, I usually carry a book with me, which is great. I love reading anyways. So I can tell a story with my story. So I can play with it. I have lots of different ways and experiment with your props. So in this case, I can have an outward prop, or I'm reading a book. I can have it kind of tucked under my arm. In this case, I'm making do with the triangle, and I'm also not hiding the prop. It's very, very easy with small props to hide them. So if I kind of have it on the side and out like this, no one can see my awesome book. I switch it over to the other side, and they're able to see it. In the moment, it's very easy to forget about props, especially if you've been carrying them around all day, but make them work for you and make them tell the story. And finally, well, not finally, practice makes perfect. So usually when I debut a cosplay, before I go to a convention or before I go to a photo shoot, I get together with my friends or myself with a timer on my camera or in front of a mirror, and I practice these things. I practice facial expressions. I see how these different angles work on the camera. I try different mentalities. I try different stories to see what works well. And it works really well if you grab a friend, well, if you grab some cosplays and your cell phone cameras, run out to the park and have a good time for the day. But practice in different poses, practice in different expressions, practice with different props. That way you know what it looks like on camera, and you have some ideas, and you're prepared with these poses when you get to a convention, and that super excited fan guy comes running up and says, I want your picture. Then you'll know what to think about, and you'll know what type of story you want, and you're not stuck doing the exact same pose the entire day, which happens to me way too often. Now, all of this is important, and all of these logistics are important in creating that story and creating these pictures. But honestly, the absolute most important thing about cosplay photography is to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not cosplaying. And if you're not having fun, that's going to show up in your picture. You're not going to have that energy. You're not going to have that smile. And when you look at the pictures later, you're not going to have as many fond memories. Because if you're not having fun, what's the point of putting this all together? And so don't be afraid of blooper pictures. Don't be afraid of messing up, because there's no such thing. This creates memories, and this is why we come every time to these conventions and wake up stupid early and burn our fingers off on hot glue, which I know every single one of you has.
Or cut ourselves with a knife.
Cut yourself with knives. This is why we cosplay, and this is why we keep coming back. So, before we start the game, are there any questions, comments, concerns, or cookies?
No one ran out to get cookies? Your panel's too good.
Oh, what can I say? All right, so now we're going to have some fun, because that's the whole point of cosplay photos. So we are doing what is called a cosplay posing battle. So here's how this works. Two cosplayers will come up, and you're going to do a series of 3 quote-unquote battle poses against each other. Now, that could be like a full-on battle pose. You could do a cutesy pose. I'm looking at you, Master Roshi.
I'm flattered.
Whatever you think, whatever type of pose you think will defeat your opponent. At the end of 3 rounds, the audience will vote by clapping. If contestant A wins, yay! Or contestant B wins, woo! And then we have some fun. Annie, could I borrow you for a practice round?
Sure.
Because Annie, I think, is the only one here that's played with me.
I have no idea how that's going to turn out.
Oh, thank you. All right, so here we go. Round 1. Round 2. Round 3. All right, so now the audience votes. Sarah!
Woo!
It was the lean. Everyone loves a good JoJo-esque pose.
I'm not nearly as good as Lorian is on this. Thank you for
Wow.
helping me with that. And that's the cosplay posing battle.
Thank you.
So, do I have 2 volunteers? Roshi, come on up, and Julius. I thought I can't go up.
Go for it. Oh, go, careful, careful.
It's hard to do the thing.
That's half the fun, though. All right, contestants, are you ready? Oh, we're waiting.
Oh!
We have a battle cat that has entered the arena. Round 1, fight! Oh, this is going to be a tough one. Round 2, fight! Don't kill yourself because the paperwork is atrocious. There we go. How much can you hold this? I'm really...
We'll just keep going.
Okay, round 3, fight! All right, audience, place your votes. Player 2.
Player 3.
Rolo is the winner. Excellent, thank you guys. Do I have 2 more volunteers? Oh, come on, I really don't mind.
What's that? Edna and Celeste want to do it? Well.
Oh, do Edna and Celeste want to do it?
I think Edna and Celeste really do want to do it.
Yeah, that was fun.
I don't want to do anything.
Cowards.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, that was a fighting word.
Who wants to face Edna? Enter the ring. You throw me in the bus, I throw you. All right. The bus has room.
Let me fix my umbrella.
Something like that.
Yeah, Bear needs
Coffee's
to
still
sleep.
kicking in. Do it for Richard.
Do it for the vine.
All right, contestants, are you ready?
Why not?
Round 1, fight! Round 2. I don't know what I'm doing. Nice triangles here, guys. Round 3, fight! Forgot you had to open this.
Ooh.
All right, audience, place your votes. Player 1. Player 2. I believe Edna wins.
Was there ever any doubt?
Oh, don't hit anyone with that, right? Thank you, cosplayers. Do I have 2 more volunteers? No more volunteers?
Can you record?
It's hard to top me.
I'll
It
go.
is hard. All right. Sarah has entered the arena. Do I have a challenger? You also don't have to be in cosplay if you want to come up. Anyone? Are you going to make me fight against Sarah again? All right.
What's that? Pick someone from the audience.
Okay. Round 1. Round 2. Okay. Round 3.
You disappeared.
All right. Audience, place your votes. Sarah. And Keel. I think that was about a tie. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And I have lost the button.
Well, Rose, look who finally
There's
showed
a
up.
cosplay repair station in the artist alley.
It's okay, I forgot to put lip color on. I'm going to go back and do that after this.
Do I have 2 more volunteers?
Cosplay posing battle.
Oh, sure.
All right.
Woohoo.
Our Maddest Rose is entering the arena. Do we have a contender?
Does Edna want to fight herself with Rose?
Trust no one, not even yourself.
All right. Edna versus Edna and Rose.
It's a little confusing. Don't even bother questioning it.
This is not in any of my books. How great you are.
way I'll win.
Who are you?
The gauntlet has been thrown.
Who do you think they came from?
You don't want to see these things get thrown. What happened once?
No throwing rocks, just shade. Round 1,
Shade.
fight! Round 2, fight!
Oh.
No real fight, no blood. Round 3, fight!
Good tango over here.
One.
My turn.
All right, ladies. Audience, catch your votes. Player 1. Player 2. Wow, Edna, you kind of win. Edna wins.
You know what we need to do real quick?
What do you need to do real quick?
Oh.
Oh dear.
Fusion dance.
Thank you, cosplayers. Do I have 2 more volunteers? Going once? Going twice? All right, thank you so much for coming out. Again, my name is Aydan. I'll be doing a Power of Mana panel tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I believe we're right next door. I'll be talking about mana, both from how it's used in video games, but more importantly, its real-world roots in the Polynesian culture. So come check it out. It's going to be a good time. I am WYSIWYG Visions on Facebook and WYSIWYG Visions on Instagram. And come check out the cosplay contest, which is going to be located right next door at 12 o'clock. And if any of you have signed up for it, the cosplay pre-judging starts in just a few minutes right outside in the courtyard. Thanks so much for coming out. Have a great rest of your convention!